Hello, I'm Simon Kerins, and I'm here to pay tribute to two recently departed footballing legends, Cyrille Regis and Jimmy Armfield. On the face of it, these were two very contrasting characters, born a generation apart and from very different backgrounds, yet on closer inspection, I think it's fair to say that they had much more in common than one might at first think. Cyrille Regis was born in French Guiana on the 9th of February 1958. He moved to England with his family in 1962 and grew up in North London. Having concluded his education, he became an electrician and was to continue in the trade until moving into professional football. Prior to doing that, he played for Molesey and then Hayes, before being spotted by Ronnie Allen, who was then the chief scout at West Bromwich Albion. It's fair to say that the young Regis made a very big impression on Allen. Indeed, so confident was Allen that Regis would be a success that he offered to fund the initial transfer fee himself. A short while later, Allen was to become manager at the Hawthorns, and before long Regis had quickly established himself in the team. After Allen left the club to be replaced by Ron Atkinson, Regis' progress at the Hawthorns grew. He went from strength to strength. And it was Atkinson, you might recall, who coined that famous phrase about the 3 degrees in reference to Regis and his fellow black teammates, Brendan Batson and Laurie Cunningham. Indeed, after Viv Anderson and Cunningham, Regis was to become the third black player, should I say only the third black player, to be capped by England. He won 5 caps in a 5-year period between 1982 and 1987. 1987 was a significant year for Regis, as he helped Coventry City win the FA Cup for the first time in their history. Towards the end of his career, Regis would be reunited with Atkinson at Aston Villa. He also played for Wolves and Wycombe Wanderers. Although racism remains a sad blot in football today, it's fair to say that it is nowhere near as big an issue as was the case 25, 30, 40 years ago. Black players were then frequently booed by their own supporters, not just during the game, but when their name was read out at the start of it. It was not uncommon for them to receive bananas from the crowd, hurled by their own fans, as well as those supporting the opposition. For Regis, it got even worse. Having been called up to play for England, he was sent a bullet in the post. You can imagine that this caused great offence. It certainly hurt him emotionally, but yet Regis kept smiling. He was, after all, famous for his big, beaming smile. For the record, he kept the bullet, but rose above the episode. Cyrille Regis leaves a tremendous legacy, not just for young black players who aspire to make it in football, but for anyone in love with the game, for anyone wanting to see the game and the values passed down from generation to generation, especially given the romantic link that hailed from starting at the grassroots level of the game. Regis, having concluded his footballing career, remained active in the game behind the scenes, supporting numerous charitable initiatives and deservedly being awarded an MBE in 2008. I will conclude this tribute with a very moving quote from Cyrille Regis, one that is typical of the man. Now, however, I want to move on to Jimmy Armfield, born in Denton on the 21st of September 1935. The family moved from Denton on the east side of Manchester to Blackpool during World War II, and that was a significant move in terms of Armfield's life. He was to be a one-club man at Blackpool, having been spotted in a practice match by Joe Smith. On that occasion, Armfield played left wing, but he was to become a celebrated right-back, regarded as the best in Europe and also in the world. He made his debut for the Tangerines in 1954, the year after the famous Matthews FA Cup final, A couple of years later, in 1956, he was instrumental in helping Blackpool finish as runners-up in the league, to date their highest ever league position. The following year could have seen him join Manchester United in what was poignantly the year before the Munich air disaster. United were interested, but Joe Smith and Blackpool said no. You may argue that it did ultimately hold Armfield back, but Armfield never one to complain, never one to moan and wonder what if only, was happy to stay at his beloved Blackpool. Between 1959 and 1966, Jimmy Armfield won 43 caps for England, 15 of them as captain. He lost out to George Cohen in 1964 following an injury, and struggled to depose the same player in the team over the course of the next 2 years. Had he done so, he would almost certainly have been captain when England won the World Cup in 1966. In the event, although he was named in the squad, he played no part in the tournament, but once again, and typical of the man, he harboured no ill feelings. Indeed, he famously said years later that he was just glad to have been part of the team that did win the World Cup. Back in the day, World Cup medals were only handed out to players who had actually played in the final. As a result, Jimmy Armfield would wait a staggering 43 years before receiving a World Cup winners' medal in 2009. Having concluded his playing career, Armfield moved into management with great success. In 1973, under his guidance, Bolton Wanderers won the 3rd Division title. The following year, Armfield moved to Elland Road to replace Brian Clough as Leeds manager, following Clough's disastrous and notorious 44-day stint at the helm. In 1975, Armfield guided Leeds to the European Cup final, where they controversially lost to Bayern Munich. Armfield's tact and diplomacy and personal skills served him very well in the aftermath of what was, as I say, a very controversial and hotly disputed final. Those very same skills were to stand him in excellent stead for radio, where his soothing voice, conveying knowledge and sincerity, firmly but fairly, endeared him to radio fans like me for many years to come. We're talking here about a very versatile man, a great footballer, a great football manager, a wonderful media pundit, a professional, an administrator, an all-round nice guy. Wearing his administrator's hat, Armfield was to be key in the appointment of 2 England managers, Terry Venables in 1994 and Glenn Hoddle 2 years later. He continued to be active in the local community, famously as organist in his local parish church. He also went on to be the Deputy Lieutenant and High Sheriff of Lancashire. He was awarded a CBE in 2010 and was recognised as a Global Football Ambassador in 2016. Like Regis, he made a great impact. He was an inspiration, and he was richly deserving of his awards and the outpouring of grief following his sad passing. Now, I never like to make assumptions, but I think it's fair to say that at some point down the years, Cyrille Regis and Jimmy Armfield must have met. If they didn't meet on Earth, I think it's fair to say that they're now meeting up above, having a good chat, a good chin wag about the game that they love so very much. Both decent football men, talented players, great leaders, great examples on the field as well as off it. They saw football as a game to be played with a smile on the face, something to arouse positivity, something for the masses. That, after all, is so key in the success of football, the national sport, in many ways the global sport, and certainly for me, the greatest sport in the world. Both men will be much missed. They're already much missed. But they do leave us with a legacy. They leave us with great memories, and Cyrille Regis leaves us with a wonderful quote taken from his autobiography. I will share those words with you now as I conclude this tribute. Regis said, "My parting words to you are these. Have a vision for your life. Set goals and aim high. Life is for living. You may make mistakes or fail, but there is always a lesson that you can learn from those mistakes and failures. Try to learn the lesson quickly and use the experience to grow. I am living proof that you can succeed in spite of circumstances, your environment, criticism, and self-inflicted errors. Surround yourself with people that will encourage you, lift you up, and not pull you down." A lovely way to end this tribute to Cyrille Regis and Jimmy Armfield. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it.